The afternoon road outside the royal estate was calm and bright when guard Adam began his regular patrol along the long stretch leading toward the palace entrance, and while driving slowly in his patrol car, he noticed a white van moving ahead of him in a strange, unsteady way, as if one of its tires had lost balance or the driver was under stress, and because it was his duty to check anything that looked unsafe, he signaled the van to pull over at the side of the road, wanting to keep everyone safe without causing any worry. The white van came to a gentle stop near a patch of tall trees, and Adam stepped out of his vehicle with a steady and calm posture, making sure his presence would not frighten anyone, and as he walked toward the driver's window, he saw a woman behind the wheel who looked nervous but respectful, and when she lowered her window she tried to speak before he even asked anything, telling him her name was Rosa and that she worked as a caretaker for special outings arranged by the palace. Adam offered her a kind nod, trying to show that she was not in any trouble, and he asked her politely about the slow and shaky movement of the van, wondering if everything was all right inside, and before Rosa could reply fully a faint sound reached Adam's ears from the back of the van, a sound so soft that most people might have ignored it, but to a trained guard like him the sound was clear enough to raise concern, because it carried the tone of someone trying not to cry but unable to stop. Adam gently asked Rosa who was in the back, and Rosa explained that she had taken a young royal guest out for a small art event earlier that day, and before she could finish her words Adam requested permission to open the sliding door because the sound from inside made him worry for the welfare of whoever was back there, and Rosa agreed at once, stepping aside nervously as if she already knew something sad had happened. Adam slid the door open with care and lowered himself slightly so he could look inside the van without appearing threatening, and there he saw a young girl sitting in the back seat with her knees pulled close to her chest and her arms wrapped around them as if she wanted to make herself small and unnoticeable. And when she turned her face slightly toward Adam, he recognized her immediately, because she was Princess Charlotte, one of the most gentle and well-mannered children in the royal family, known for her quiet nature and kind heart. Charlotte's eyes were swollen from crying, her cheeks were still wet, and even though she tried to wipe her tears with the back of her hand she could not hide the sadness that hung around her like a heavy blanket, and what struck Adam most was that she did not look frightened of him or the situation, she looked hurt from something deeper, something that had wounded her feelings rather than her body. Wanting to avoid towering over her, Adam knelt down so he would be at her eye level, and he spoke in a gentle voice asking if she felt sick or scared, but Charlotte shook her head slowly, holding a small folded piece of paper tightly in both hands, gripping it as if it held something important or painful, and Adam could sense that whatever upset her was connected to that paper. Rosa stood outside the van biting her lip nervously, explaining that Charlotte had asked for a short outing to attend a small friendly art event for children, and the outing had started well, but something during the visit had clearly upset her in a way Rosa did not understand, and Charlotte had gone quiet the moment they left the venue, refusing to speak or look out the window, her silence filled with hidden sadness. Adam felt concern rising in his heart, because he understood that children often carried heavy feelings that adults failed to see, and he asked Charlotte softly if she wanted to tell him what had happened, but she only pressed the folded paper closer to her chest as if she wanted to protect it from being lost or taken away, so Adam asked gently if he could see it, assuring her he would not judge her and was only trying to understand so he could help. After a long pause Charlotte slowly offered the folded paper to him, her hand trembling just a little, and Adam unfolded it carefully inside the van where the light shone well enough, and what he saw made his heart sink in a quiet and heavy way, because it was a drawing made by a group of children at the art event, and although it was colorful, cheerful, and lively at first glance, one thing stood out painfully clearly. The drawing showed many children playing together, laughing and holding hands in a wide circle, but Princess Charlotte was drawn far away from them on the side of the page, standing alone with a sad face, and above her figure some child had written words that cut deeper than anyone her age should ever experience, saying she did not belong with them because she looked too perfect and too different, as if her identity and her royal background made her unworthy of joining their fun. Adam felt a deep ache in his chest, because he knew how heavy unkindness could feel especially when it came from other children who did not even understand the weight of their words, and he looked at Charlotte who watched him with quiet fear, as if she expected him to agree with the harsh message on the paper. But Adam shook his head gently and told her with complete honesty that being different did not mean she was unwanted or unfit. He told her that she had a kind heart, a warm spirit, and her gentle nature made her special in ways no drawing could erase, and hearing this Charlotte's eyes softened a little, her tight shoulders eased a little, and her breathing became steadier, as if Adam's words had opened a small doorway of comfort inside her painful moment. But the sadness had not vanished completely, and Adam knew this sort of wound needed more than a few soft words. It needed understanding, time, and a sense of safety. So he asked Charlotte if she wanted a little fresh air before they returned to the palace, and after thinking for a moment she nodded quietly, wiping her face with the sleeve of her dress as she tried to gather her strength again. Adam helped her step out of the van carefully, making sure she felt supported without being crowded, and he guided her to a small bench near the roadside where the evening light glowed warmly across the landscape, giving the world a softer touch, and Charlotte sat down slowly, her small shoulders rising and falling in a calm rhythm now that she had space to breathe. Adam sat a bit apart from her so she would not feel pressured, and he waited patiently until she chose to speak, knowing that rushing her would only make her close off again. And after a long quiet moment Charlotte spoke in a tiny voice, saying she always felt watched and judged, that everyone expected her to be perfect every day, everywhere, and in front of everyone, and at the art event she had hoped she could feel like a normal child, just for once. Hearing this truth from someone so young felt like a weight pressed on Adam's heart, and he understood that loneliness could exist even inside a palace filled with people, and he told her gently that real strength was not about being perfect, it was about staying kind and steady even when others failed to see her worth, and Charlotte listened with her full attention. As if the simple words gave shape to feelings she could never explain to anyone before. The soft breeze moved around them, carrying away some of the sadness that had settled on her, and when she finally looked up at Adam her eyes held a faint calmness that had been missing earlier, a small spark of trust growing in the space between them. Like quiet sunlight breaking through clouds, the soft evening breeze moved gently around the roadside bench where Charlotte sat with quiet shoulders and lowered eyes, and Adam remained beside her at a respectful distance, giving her enough space to breathe while still letting her know she was not alone, and the calm air seemed to wrap around them like a warm blanket after a long cold day, offering comfort that neither words nor actions could fully give on their own. And Charlotte slowly let out a shaky breath, as if the weight inside her chest was loosening just a little. Rosa stood near the van watching the scene with a careful gaze, relieved that the princess was starting to relax but still unsure how much sadness Charlotte carried in her heart, and she kept her hands clasped together nervously while hoping the young girl would feel better before they returned to the palace where everyone would surely ask questions she did not want to answer yet. But for now the moment was gentle and quiet, giving Charlotte time to find her voice again. Adam turned slightly toward Charlotte without moving too close, and told her she could talk as little or as much as she wished, and she appreciated that he was not forcing her to share every detail, because sometimes the hardest pain was the kind that did not want to be spoken at all, and after a long silent moment she began speaking in a slow and careful voice, explaining that she had looked forward to the art event for days, and wanted to meet children her age who might see her simply as another child rather than a princess under constant watch. She said she had walked into the little event hall feeling excited and hopeful, carrying a small bag of markers she had chosen herself, imagining that maybe she would make a friend who enjoyed drawing the same way she did, but instead she had been stared at by many children who whispered to each other, pointing toward her in a way that made her feel out of place even before the drawing session started, and it reminded her that she could not escape her title no matter where she went. Adam listened carefully, nodding gently as she spoke, understanding that her sadness came from more than a single moment, and Charlotte continued telling him that she had tried to sit with a small group of children who were drawing colorful shapes and animals, but they had made her feel like an outsider by keeping their voices low whenever she approached, and she felt her presence was like a barrier rather than a welcome addition to their circle. Then she explained that during the group drawing activity one of the children took over the page where everyone was supposed to create a shared artwork, and instead of including her in the scene they placed her alone at the edge of the page in the drawing, and they whispered among themselves that she was too polished and too different to play with them. And when she saw those words written above her drawn figure her chest had tightened in a painful way she could not hide. Adam felt his heart twist gently because he had seen this sort of unkindness before, not always intentional but still hurtful, especially when directed toward a child who only wanted to belong, and he told Charlotte that what those children said did not define her value or her kindness, and that her worth was not measured by the harsh opinions of others but by the goodness she carried in her actions and her heart. And Charlotte listened, as if every word helped mend something slowly inside her. She looked down at her hands, which were clasped together tightly in her lap, and she admitted she felt ashamed for crying in the van because she thought she had to be strong all the time, especially in public, and that she feared disappointing her parents by showing sadness. but Adam shook his head gently and told her that even the strongest people in the world had moments when they felt hurt or lonely, and that crying did not make her weak. It simply made her human. Charlotte raised her eyes slightly, surprised by how simply he said it, and she allowed herself a small breath of relief that washed away some of the heaviness she had been carrying since the event, and she realized that Adam saw her not as a princess but as a young girl who needed comfort and understanding, something she rarely received from people outside her family. Rosa approached slowly with a soft voice, asking if Charlotte wanted some water or a moment inside the van where she could rest, but Charlotte shook her head gently, choosing to remain on the bench because the fresh air made her feel calmer, and Rosa nodded with relief and stepped back again, letting Adam continue guiding the conversation with his steady warmth. Adam asked her if she wished to tell her parents what happened, but Charlotte hesitated for a long moment before admitting she did not want them to worry or think she failed to make friends, and she feared they might pity her, which she disliked even more than being judged by strangers, and Adam understood that what she wanted most was normalcy, a simple day without heavy expectations or unwanted attention. He told her gently that parents cared not because they judged but because they loved, and that sharing her feelings with them would not make them see her in a lesser way, but instead help them understand how to support her in moments when she felt small, and Charlotte listened closely, letting his words sink deep into her heart like soft rain on dry ground. The sky around them shifted to a deeper shade of evening, and golden light touched the edges of the nearby trees, making the moment feel calm and safe, and Charlotte slowly unfolded her hands as if letting go of the tightness held inside them, and she looked at Adam with eyes that were no longer filled with fear but with a growing sense of trust, a trust she rarely gave to anyone outside her family. She told him she wished she could go places without being stared at, without people expecting perfection from her, and Adam replied that she deserved moments where she could simply breathe and be a child, and he promised that whenever he was present he would help create a safe space where she could feel like herself without fear of judgment, and Charlotte felt a quiet warmth spread through her chest at those words. Rosa cleared her throat softly and asked Adam what the next step should be, whether they should return to the palace immediately or wait a little longer, and Adam looked at Charlotte, who took a deep breath and said she was feeling calmer but not fully ready to face the large palace halls where every emotion felt larger and louder, and Adam agreed that they should take a little more time until she felt steady enough. He remained seated beside her, letting the quiet moment stretch naturally, and Charlotte leaned ever so slightly toward his side, not enough to touch but enough to show she felt safer near him, and Adam allowed the silence to speak for them, understanding that sometimes silence healed better than any long conversation. After a few more minutes Charlotte opened her mouth carefully and asked Adam a question that surprised him, asking why he had chosen to become a guard, and he smiled softly and explained that he had always believed in protecting people who carried responsibilities heavier than others realized, because those people often needed the most understanding even though they seldom asked for it. And Charlotte looked at him with genuine interest, as if his answer added another layer of comfort to her day. She said she liked how he talked to her not as a princess but as a regular young girl, and Adam replied that to him kindness mattered more than titles, and Charlotte felt another soft wave of relief wash over her because it made her feel seen in a simple human way she wished for so deeply. As the sky continued to darken with the soft glow of early evening, Charlotte finally said she was ready to return to the palace, but she asked if Adam could ride with them the rest of the way, saying his presence made her feel safe and steady again, and Adam nodded gently, promising he would stay with her until she reached home feeling strong and calm. Charlotte stood up slowly, wiping the last traces of tears from her face, and she walked toward the van with a steadier step than before, knowing she was not alone on this quiet road, and that someone truly understood her heart. The soft evening light slowly faded as Charlotte stepped toward the van with Adam walking close behind her, not too near to make her feel crowded, but near enough that she felt his presence like a steady hand guiding her gently toward calmness, and Rosa opened the side door with a relieved expression because the princess no longer looked overwhelmed, though her eyes still carried a quiet sadness that had not fully lifted from her heart. And Adam made sure she entered the van safely before taking the seat beside her as requested. Charlotte sat quietly for a moment, her fingers resting on her lap while she took slow breaths, wanting to gather every bit of strength she had before returning to the palace where many eyes would be watching, and Adam waited patiently beside her, giving her time without asking any questions because he understood that healing did not happen in a rush but in steady soft steps that should not be forced. The van started moving slowly under Rosa's careful driving, and the hum of the road created a soothing rhythm inside the quiet space, helping Charlotte relax just a little as she looked out the window where trees and faint lights passed by in a gentle blur, and she felt like the world outside was bigger than her sadness, reminding her that moments full of hurt did not last forever even when they felt heavy. Adam noticed Charlotte glancing toward him, and he smiled in a warm and calm way that made her feel understood without needing any words, and she leaned slightly toward him though still keeping a polite distance, and she spoke in a soft voice, asking if he thought the children at the art event meant to hurt her feelings on purpose, or if they simply did not understand the effect of their actions. And Adam thought carefully before answering because he wanted to give her truth wrapped in kindness. He told her that sometimes people acted without thinking about the feelings of others, especially children who had not yet understood how deep simple words could cut, and he added that some children might have felt nervous around her because of her title, and decided to keep distance in a way that turned unkind without them realizing it, and Charlotte listened closely, taking comfort in the idea that perhaps their words were not meant to be cruel, but were a reflection of confusion or fear. Charlotte let out a small breath, almost a sigh, and admitted that being different often made her feel lonely even when she was surrounded by many people. And Adam gently reassured her that being different did not mean being alone because there would always be people who saw her real self and not just her title, and she nodded slowly as if absorbing every word like a warm blanket around her heart. The van continued down the evening road which now grew dimmer as soft lights from distant houses flickered in the distance, and the gentle hum of the engine made the moment peaceful enough for Charlotte to share more of her thoughts, and she spoke about wanting to attend events without worrying about her appearance or how people would treat her, wishing she could simply enjoy being a child without heavy expectations placed on her shoulders. Adam listened with genuine attention, never interrupting, allowing her to speak freely because he knew she seldom had anyone outside her family who listened without judgment or pressure, and he told her that wanting to feel normal was not wrong, and that everyone deserved moments where they could just breathe without carrying the weight of who they were expected to be, and Charlotte felt a small spark of comfort growing stronger inside her chest. She looked down at her hands and spoke about the drawing again, explaining how she wished the children had simply asked her to join rather than deciding she did not belong, and Adam nodded gently saying that true belonging came from kindness and open hearts, not from titles or backgrounds, and he reminded her that she had shown more kindness in her quiet nature than many children showed even with all their freedom and confidence. Charlotte felt grateful hearing this because it made her feel that her calm personality was not a burden but a strength, and she smiled faintly in a shy way, the kind of smile that appeared after a long time of holding in tears, and Adam felt relieved seeing that small sign of healing in her expression because it meant the weight she carried was slowly lifting. As the van moved closer to the palace road, Charlotte grew quieter again, and Adam noticed the shift in her breathing as her shoulders tensed slightly, and he knew the thought of returning to the palace filled her with a mix of worry and hesitation because she feared appearing weak or emotional in front of her family or the palace staff who sometimes misread her feelings. So he spoke calmly and told her she had nothing to fear because returning home after a difficult moment was a sign of strength, not weakness. Charlotte turned her head toward him and asked with a soft expression if he truly believed she was strong even though she had cried, and Adam answered without hesitation saying that crying did not take strength away but showed courage because it meant she allowed herself to feel rather than pretending everything was perfect, and Charlotte took in that answer with care, feeling deeply understood in a way she rarely experienced. Rosa listened quietly from the front seat, touched by how patient and gentle Adam was, and grateful for the way he guided Charlotte through her emotions without ever making her feel small, and the van continued down the smooth road lined with short lamps glowing with soft warm light that created a peaceful path toward the palace where the evening staff waited at the gate. Charlotte began to speak again, this time about her parents, saying that they always tried to help her but she sometimes felt she could not explain her feelings well because she did not want to add worry to their busy lives. And Adam assured her that parents always preferred knowing the truth about their children's hearts, even if the truth carried sadness, because love was stronger when shared openly. And he told her her parents would never feel burdened by her honesty. Charlotte listened as if his words were gentle steps guiding her across a difficult bridge, and she felt her burden lighten as she imagined being able to speak to her parents without fear of disappointing them, and she whispered that maybe she would tell them after reaching home, though she was still unsure how to begin. And Adam said he would stay by her side until she felt confident enough to speak. The van drove past the last turn before the main palace road, and Charlotte looked out the window at the tall iron gate standing in the distance, its familiar silhouette bringing a mix of comfort and nervousness, because even though it was her home it was a place where she sometimes felt she had to hide her true feelings behind a calm face to avoid making anyone worry. Adam noticed her tension return slowly, and he placed his hand on the seat beside her in a reassuring manner, not touching her but offering silent support, and he told her that she did not have to walk into the palace feeling alone because he would walk with her until she reached her parents who loved her more than she imagined, and Charlotte nodded with a small determined breath that showed she was gathering courage. Rosa slowed the van as they approached the gate, and the guards stationed there recognized the vehicle at once, opening the gate without delay and greeting Adam with respectful nods, and Charlotte sat straighter in her seat preparing herself for the final stretch of the return, and Adam kept his presence steady like a calm anchor for her heart. The van rolled forward along the long entrance road leading to the front courtyard, and the palace lights glowed warmly against the deepening evening sky, creating a beautiful sight that usually filled Charlotte with peace but today felt heavier because of everything she had gone through, yet with Adam beside her she no longer felt completely alone. Rosa parked the van near the front steps of the palace, and she turned around asking Charlotte softly if she was ready, and the young princess took one last deep breath before nodding slowly, and Adam opened the door gently helping her step out with calm assurance in his movements, and Charlotte felt her heart beating steadily thanks to the comfort he gave her throughout the entire ride. She looked up at the tall palace doors and then back at Adam who gave her a quiet encouraging smile, and with renewed courage she prepared to walk inside knowing she had someone who understood her and would continue to support her as she faced the next steps of her evening. The warm palace lights glowed softly as Charlotte stood near the steps, gathering her courage while Adam stayed beside her with a calm steady presence that helped her heart beat in a peaceful rhythm, and Rosa remained respectfully behind them watching with gentle worry as the young princess prepared to walk into the place she loved yet feared at the same time because she knew every tear on her face could raise questions she was not ready to answer, and the evening breeze carried a quiet stillness as if trying to give her strength in this delicate moment. Charlotte hesitated before taking her first step toward the wide front doors, and Adam noticed the small tremble in her hands, so he lowered his voice and told her that she did not need to rush and could take her time until she felt ready, and his patient tone helped her breathe a little easier, reminding her that she was not facing this moment alone, and Charlotte nodded slowly before beginning to walk forward, her small shoes tapping lightly on the smooth stone path that led to the entrance. As they approached the tall doors a pair of palace attendants opened them politely, bowing with respectful attention, and Charlotte felt their eyes on her though they tried not to stare, and for a brief moment she worried that they could see the sadness lingering in her expression. But Adam walked slightly beside her in a protective way that made her feel shielded from unnecessary attention, and she lifted her chin gently to appear calm, even though her heart was still tender. Inside the palace the grand hallway stretched before them with its warm lamps glowing along the walls and its polished floor reflecting soft light like a gentle golden river, and Charlotte felt a mix of comfort and nervousness fill her chest because although this hallway had been part of her life since she was very young it sometimes felt too large and too quiet when she carried sadness inside her, and Adam kept his steps slow to match hers as she carefully moved forward. A young maid walking through the hall noticed Charlotte and paused with a worried expression asking if everything was all right, but Charlotte did not know how to respond and glanced toward Adam who stepped forward slightly and explained politely that the princess had experienced a long day and needed to reach her parents without disturbance, and the maid nodded quickly stepping aside and lowering her gaze out of respect, giving Charlotte the space she needed. As they walked deeper into the palace Charlotte felt as if the walls held a quiet expectation, as if waiting for her to speak or smile or show some sign of normalcy, but she had no energy to pretend right now, and she leaned slightly closer to Adam who kept his voice calm and soft, telling her that she did not need to act perfect inside her own home because home was the one place where she was allowed to show her true self without fear. Charlotte appreciated those words because no one had ever said it in such a simple gentle way before, and she felt another soft breath escape her chest as she allowed herself to relax even though her emotions still felt delicate, and as they neared the family hallway she touched her sleeve nervously while thinking about what she should say to her parents when she saw them, and the worry in her mind made her steps slow again. Adam noticed this pause and asked kindly if she wanted a moment before they continued, and Charlotte nodded gratefully sitting down on a small cushioned bench placed near a tall window that looked out at the evening sky, and Adam stood nearby giving her time to gather her thoughts while Rosa waited quietly by the hallway corner ready to leave once her task was complete, and the calm palace air wrapped around them with a comforting stillness. Charlotte rested her hands in her lap and gazed at the darkening sky outside, feeling the reflection of her own emotions in its quiet peaceful colors, and after a moment she spoke in a soft whisper saying that she feared her parents would feel disappointed if they learned she had cried over something that might seem small, and Adam shook his head gently telling her that her parents loved her deeply and would never dismiss her pain no matter how small it might seem to others. He reminded her that her parents saw her not just as a princess but as their daughter, a child who deserved kindness, understanding and comfort, and Charlotte listened carefully, letting his words ease her worry like a warm light spreading through her heart, and she slowly lifted her head with more confidence than before, feeling ready to stand once again. She rose from the bench and took a steady breath, then asked Adam if he would walk with her to the last turn before the family room, saying she felt stronger with him nearby, and Adam agreed with a warm smile, knowing that his presence helped her feel calm and supported, and together they walked through the hallway whose quiet warmth now felt more welcoming than intimidating. When they reached the turn leading to the family sitting room, Charlotte stopped again, but this time the pause came not from fear but from thoughtfulness, as if she wanted to choose the right words for her parents, and Adam placed his hand lightly behind her back without touching, just offering comfort through presence, and he told her she could speak slowly and honestly because honesty was the heart of love in any family. Charlotte nodded again and thanked him in a soft, gentle tone, and for the first time since leaving the art event she felt a steady confidence inside her chest, not strong enough to erase her sadness but strong enough to guide her through it, and this gave her the courage she needed to go forward. Before she stepped into the room, Charlotte turned to Adam one last time and asked quietly if he would wait right outside until she finished talking to her parents, and he agreed with a reassuring expression, saying he would be there if she needed him afterward, and Charlotte felt comforted knowing she was not being left alone to face her emotions without support. She walked forward and pushed the door slightly where warm light spilled into the hallway, and inside she saw her mother Queen Maria sitting on a small couch reading a letter while her father King Thomas reviewed some documents near the window, and both parents looked up the moment they noticed Charlotte in the doorway, and their expressions turned to gentle concern as they took in the faint sadness in her eyes. Queen Maria stood at once and walked toward her daughter with arms open in a loving way, and Charlotte moved forward slowly until she reached the warm embrace that felt like the safest place she had known, and she allowed herself to lean into her mother's arms as her father approached with a calm, protective presence, and she felt the quiet strength of family surrounding her like a peaceful shield. Her mother stroked her hair softly, asking what happened in a gentle voice free of judgment or pressure, and Charlotte looked up at both of her parents with eyes that carried the day's pain but also the hope that honesty would not bring disappointment, and she took a deep breath, willing herself to speak the truth she had held inside for hours. She explained the art event, the children, the drawing, and the words that had made her feel unwanted and out of place, and she told them how the sadness had grown so heavy inside her that she could not keep her tears from falling in the van, and her parents listened quietly with full attention, never interrupting or dismissing her feelings, and they held her hands tightly, showing her she was loved deeply. When she finished speaking, Queen Maria knelt to her eye level and told her that being hurt did not make her weak and that her gentle heart was one of her greatest strengths, and King Thomas placed a warm hand on her shoulder, telling her that she did not need to be perfect to be loved, and that they were proud of her not for how she looked or behaved but for the kindness she carried even when others did not show kindness in return. Charlotte felt relief wash over her like calming rain because everything she feared had not happened, and instead her parents held her even closer, making her feel safe, understood, and supported, and she realized Adam had been right about them wanting her honesty more than her silence. When the conversation ended with long warm hugs, Charlotte stepped outside the room where Adam waited near the hallway, and she smiled softly at him, saying she had told her parents everything and they had comforted her with love instead of disappointment. And Adam nodded proudly, happy to see her standing with new confidence. The quiet hallway felt gentle and warm as Charlotte stepped out of the family room with a lighter heart than she had carried all day, and Adam stood waiting near the wall with a calm, steady presence that had become a kind of shelter for her during this long emotional evening, and when Charlotte saw him she offered a shy, peaceful smile that spoke more than words could express, showing how grateful she felt for the comfort he had given her at every step of the journey from the roadside bench to the palace doors. Adam returned her smile with a respectful kindness, sensing that she was still a little tired but no longer weighed down by fear or sadness, and he asked in a soft voice if she was feeling better now that she had spoken with her parents, and Charlotte nodded slowly, telling him that her mother and father had listened with full understanding and had comforted her in a warm way that made her feel safe and loved, and Adam felt a quiet relief knowing that her heart had found the support it needed. Charlotte stood for a moment gathering her thoughts, and then she said that she wanted to thank Adam for guiding her through the hardest feelings she had ever carried, because without him she might have hidden her sadness and remained alone with her fear of being misunderstood, and Adam replied humbly that he had only done what anyone with a kind heart would have done, and that he was honored she trusted him enough to share her feelings. The air in the hallway felt softer now as Charlotte leaned slightly against the nearby wall, taking a small breath of calm, and she looked up at Adam with thoughtful eyes, wondering how someone who had known her for only a few hours could understand her emotions more clearly than many people who spent years in the palace, and she realized that kindness did not need long time to grow, kindness only needed understanding and a gentle heart. Rosa approached quietly from the far end of the hall, ready to leave the palace now that her duty for the day was complete, and she bowed respectfully to Charlotte, expressing relief that the young princess seemed steadier and calmer, and Charlotte thanked Rosa for taking care of her throughout the outing, even though the day had taken an unexpected turn. And Rosa's smile softened at the gratitude, because she had worried deeply when she saw the princess crying in the van earlier. After Rosa left, Charlotte walked with Adam through the main hallway toward the inner courtyard where a peaceful fountain shimmered in the evening light, and she asked if they could sit there for a moment before going to her room because the day had felt heavy and she wanted to end it somewhere calm, and Adam agreed with quiet understanding, following her gently as she made her way to the stone bench beside the flowing water. The courtyard was bathed in soft golden lamps that gave the space a warm glow, and the gentle sound of the fountain created a peaceful melody in the air that soothed the spirit, and Charlotte sat on the bench letting the cool breeze brush along her cheeks while Adam stood nearby with calm watchful eyes, ensuring she felt safe while allowing her enough space to process everything that had happened. Charlotte traced her finger along the edge of the stone bench and spoke slowly about how the drawing from the children had hurt her deeply, not only because of the unkind words, but because she had gone there with hope of being accepted just like any other child. And she explained how she always dreamed of having friends who saw her as Charlotte rather than Princess Charlotte. And Adam listened quietly, knowing that her wish was simple but not always easy to fulfill because of her position in the royal family. Adam told her gently that she should never lose hope because the world was full of kind people who would see her heart before her title, and he said that sometimes the right friends came when someone least expected them, and Charlotte smiled softly at that thought, imagining a future where she could meet people who welcomed her with open hearts instead of distant eyes, and she held on to that hope like a small glowing light in her chest. She then asked Adam if he ever felt out of place when he was younger, or if he ever experienced moments when others made him feel different, and Adam replied that everyone had such moments in their lives and that being different was not a burden but a quiet gift that allowed someone to see the world with deeper understanding. And Charlotte listened with thoughtful interest because hearing someone she respected speak openly about their own life helped her see herself with more compassion. A gentle silence fell between them as the soft sound of the fountain filled the courtyard like a calm whisper, and Charlotte rested her hands on her lap thinking about everything she had learned through this difficult day. And she realized that even though the day had brought sadness, it had also brought growth, understanding, and the discovery of new strength within herself. And she felt grateful for the experience because without it she would not have understood her feelings so clearly. After a few minutes, Charlotte turned to Adam and said she wanted to do something kind for him in return for all the comfort and support he had given her. But she was not sure what to offer because she was still young, and her world was mostly shaped by palace life and gentle childhood responsibilities. And Adam smiled kindly, telling her that her gratitude was more than enough and that seeing her smile again was the best gift he could receive. But Charlotte shook her head lightly, saying she wanted to show her appreciation in a meaningful way and she did not want his kindness to feel unnoticed, and Adam bowed his head slightly in respect, saying that he would cherish whatever she chose to give, not because of the gift itself but because of her heart behind it, and Charlotte felt warmth fill her chest at his humble response. She thought for a moment, then stood up slowly, asking him to follow her toward the garden pathway next to the courtyard, and Adam walked beside her with curiosity as she led him to a small wooden table placed near the rose bushes where palace staff usually kept extra paper and pencils for children's activities, and Charlotte picked up a clean sheet of paper, holding it gently in her hands. She told Adam that earlier she had received a drawing that made her feel unwanted and lonely, but now she wanted to create a drawing that carried the opposite meaning. A drawing filled with kindness, understanding, and warmth, and she asked Adam if she could give him a small picture that showed how he made her feel safe when she needed it most. And Adam felt a deep respectful emotion hearing her words because he knew how much courage and trust it took for her to make such an offer. Charlotte sat on a small chair and began drawing with careful, gentle strokes, and Adam stood quietly watching her work, admiring her focus and the calm determination in her expression as she created something meaningful from her heart. And the garden lights reflected softly on her hair, making her appear like a small figure of gentle hope in the quiet evening. When she finished, she turned the drawing toward Adam, and the picture showed two simple figures standing side by side in a peaceful scene, one clearly drawn as a princess with a small crown, and the other drawn as a guard with a steady posture. And the two figures stood close together, not in fear or sadness but in calm trust, surrounded by warm sunlight that filled the edges of the page. And Charlotte told him that this drawing showed how she felt protected, understood, and accepted. Adam accepted the drawing with deep appreciation, knowing it came from her heart and represented the healing she had found through their conversations and moments together, and he thanked her sincerely, telling her it was one of the most meaningful gifts he had ever received, and Charlotte felt a soft glow in her heart hearing the gentle honesty in his voice. After another peaceful moment, Charlotte said she felt ready to return to her room and rest because the day had been long, emotional and tiring, and Adam offered to walk her back to her room to ensure she felt safe, and she accepted with a small grateful nod, and together they moved through the quiet hallways whose warm lights guided their steps like gentle lanterns showing the way home. When they reached her room, Charlotte turned to Adam with a soft, grateful smile and said that today had been hard, but it had also shown her that kindness still existed in surprising places, and Adam bowed respectfully, saying he was honored to help her, and Charlotte stepped into her room feeling lighter, stronger, and surrounded by the quiet comfort of a day that had brought healing. And as the door closed gently behind her, Adam walked away carrying the drawing she had made, feeling proud to have been the steady presence she needed, and knowing that the bond of trust formed today would remain a warm memory in both of their hearts for a long time to come.